A medieval person did not grow up expecting answers to arrive quickly. They did not expect time to obey them. They did not believe that waiting was a problem to be solved. In the modern world, waiting is treated as a failure of efficiency, a delay, a malfunction in the system. We fill waiting with distractions, notifications, and noise. We shorten it, optimize it, and resent it when it cannot be eliminated. But for much of the medieval period, waiting was not an inconvenience. It was a condition of life, a posture of the body and the mind, a discipline learned early and practiced daily. To understand how medieval people learned to wait, we must step away from the modern assumption that time exists to serve human desire. Medieval Europe did not conceive of time as a neutral resource to be spent, saved, or wasted. Time was not owned. It was received. It came from God, unfolded according to divine order, and moved at a pace that could not be commanded by human will. Waiting, therefore, was not passive. It was interpretive. A medieval person waited the way one listens, not for speed, but for meaning. From birth to death, life unfolded through intervals that demanded patience. Seasons governed labor. Illness resisted prediction. Authority spoke slowly and often from a distance. Messages traveled by foot or horse. Decisions arrived after days, weeks, sometimes months. To live was to exist within delays. This reality shaped not only daily routines, but mental habits. Medieval people did not experience waiting as empty time. Waiting was full of expectation, fear, prayer, discipline, and preparation. One did not simply wait for something to happen. One waited for it to reveal itself. Agricultural life offers the clearest example. Most medieval people lived within a farming economy that obeyed rhythms beyond human control. Seeds were planted months before they bore fruit. Weather could not be negotiated with. Rain arrived or failed to arrive without explanation. A poor harvest was not merely inconvenient, it was existential. Hunger did not arrive suddenly. It approached slowly, giving people time to anticipate it, dread it, and interpret it. This anticipation taught patience by necessity. There was no shortcut between the planting and harvest. No intervention that could force wheat to grow faster or grapes to ripen early. Time itself was a collaborator, not a tool. Farmers learned to watch the sky, read the soil, and endure long periods of uncertainty. They waited, not because they chose to, but because there was no alternative. Waiting, in this context, was not idle. It was vigilant. It required attention. Religious life reinforced this discipline. Medieval Christianity was structured around waiting. The liturgical calendar itself was an education in delay. Advent taught believers to wait for Christ's arrival. Lent demanded weeks of restraint before Easter joy. Saints' feast days marked time not as progress, but as recurrence. The same stories returned year after year, reminding believers that meaning was revealed through repetition and endurance. Prayer did not promise immediate answers. God was not expected to respond on demand. Silence was not interpreted as absence. It was interpreted as testing, preparation, or mystery. Many devotional texts encourage believers to persist in prayer even when nothing seemed to change. Waiting became a sign of faith rather than doubt. Monastic life elevated this discipline to an extreme. Monks and nuns lived according to rigid schedules that fragmented time into purposeful intervals. Bells signaled when to pray, work, eat, and sleep. Personal preference was irrelevant. Desire was subordinated to rhythm. A monk learned early that impatience was not merely a flaw, it was a failure of obedience. In this environment, waiting became moral. To wait properly was to submit to order. To rush ahead of time was to assert the self over God's plan. Medieval moral teaching frequently associated impatience with sin, particularly pride. A person who could not wait revealed a soul unwilling to accept limits. Medical thought echoed this perspective. Medieval medicine, inherited from classical authorities, understood the body as a system governed by balance and gradual change. Healing was slow. Remedies worked over time, not instantly. Physicians often advised rest, moderation, and patience rather than aggressive intervention. A body was expected to recover according to its own internal rhythms. Illness, therefore, involved waiting. Patients waited to see whether a fever would break, whether a wound would close, whether symptoms would worsen or recede. This waiting was watched closely and interpreted carefully. The timing of an illness mattered. When symptoms appeared, how long they lasted, and when they resolved were all meaningful. Recovery was not rushed, it was observed. Even pain was understood to unfold over time. Sudden pain might indicate injury or imbalance, but lingering pain demanded patience. It could signal a deeper disorder or a trial to be endured. In either case, immediate relief was not always the goal. Understanding was. Legal and political life imposed further delays. Authority in medieval society was often distant and slow-moving. A peasant seeking justice might wait weeks for a court session. A dispute could remain unresolved for years. Royal decisions took time to reach remote villages. Orders were issued, carried, misunderstood, delayed, and sometimes lost. This slowness was not always experienced as failure, it was expected. Power was not immediate. It revealed itself gradually, often unpredictably. People learned to live within this uncertainty. They waited for judgment, for permission, for response. Death itself demanded waiting. Medieval people lived with a constant awareness of mortality, yet death rarely arrived cleanly or quickly. Illness often lingered. The dying person waited, sometimes for days or weeks, surrounded by family, clergy, and ritual. Death was approached deliberately. Confession, prayer, and preparation required time. This waiting before death was not meaningless. It was considered essential. A sudden death without time to prepare was feared precisely because it eliminated waiting. To die without waiting was to die without order. Waiting, in this sense, was a form of moral space. Children learned these lessons early. Childhood in the medieval period involved long stretches of observation and imitation. Skills were acquired slowly through repetition. Apprenticeships lasted years. A young person learned to wait for mastery, for permission, for advancement. Progress was gradual and often invisible. There was no expectation of rapid self-realization. Identity unfolded over time, shaped by obligation rather than choice. Waiting was not something one escaped by growing older. It was something one inhabited more fully. Crucially, medieval waiting was not optimistic in the modern sense. It did not assume improvement. Waiting could lead to disappointment, loss, or death. Yet it was endured anyway. The point was not the outcome, but the posture adopted during the interval. To wait well was to remain attentive. To wait poorly was to despair or rebel. Texts from the period often warn against two dangers: impatience and acedia, a spiritual exhaustion marked by restlessness and apathy. Both were considered failures to endure time faithfully. The solution was not distraction, but discipline. One was taught to remain present within delay. This attitude stands in stark contrast to modern habits. Today, waiting is something to be eliminated or anesthetized. Silence is filled, delay is resented. We expect explanations immediately and results quickly. When they do not arrive, we experience frustration rather than interpretation. The medieval world offered no such comfort. Explanation often came late, or not at all. Meaning had to be constructed slowly through habit, belief, and endurance. Waiting was the space in which this construction occurred. To wait was to acknowledge that not everything was available on demand, that not everything could be understood at once. That time itself had authority. This did not make medieval life easier, it made it slower, and in that slowness, certain forms of attention became possible. Waiting trained the mind to endure uncertainty without collapsing into panic. It trained the body to accept limits. It trained the soul to exist without guarantees. This discipline did not eliminate suffering. It shaped how suffering was lived. When medieval people waited, they did not assume that time would solve their problems. They assumed that time would reveal them. Waiting was not hope for resolution. It was readiness for meaning. In a world without instant answers, waiting became a way of knowing. And perhaps this is the most difficult lesson to recover today, that waiting is not empty time. It is formative time. It shapes perception, patience, and humility. It reminds us that some things cannot be rushed, not because they are inefficient, but because they require endurance. Medieval people did not master waiting. They were mastered by it, and in learning to live within time rather than against it, they developed a discipline that the modern world has largely forgotten. The ability to remain present in delay, attentive in uncertainty, and composed in silence. They waited not because they believed time would obey them, but because they understood that they belonged to time. If tonight's journey brought you a moment of calm or a spark of curiosity, you're always welcome to wander these stories again. There will be more tales waiting here, quiet histories, forgotten paths, and gentle echoes from the past. Whenever your evening calls for a peaceful escape, you know where to find me. Rest well, traveler.